Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here with you today, especially today. I don't know if you know, but in Israel, we mentioned today, the evening, and tomorrow, the Holocaust. So I think that the title Never Again couldn't be more relevant to everything I'm going to speak about. And of course, something that shapes the policies of the State of Israel and the policies of our enemies, each of them for its own views and interests. We're going to talk about the outcome of the war that is still ongoing in many ways, but in other ways that is still that already ended in some of the places. I want to start from the very personal experience. I want to share with you. I live 9 kilometers from the Israeli-Lebanese border in a small town, and I want to show you the views that I saw for 11 months from my own balcony. What you see in the video, and I'm not sure you can hear, that's actually Iron Dome intercepting barrage of 200 rockets of Hezbollah that were launched last summer. I took this video from my balcony. You can see my husband's head over there. The launching that you see here are Iron Dome interceptions, and the flashes that you see are actually the flashes of the rockets that hit the ground that were not intercepted. And I have documentation of daily attacks like this, of tens of rockets each time just above us. Sometimes we had to run for shelter and we had the sirens going on, and I saw the missiles just above us. We had 15 seconds to run for shelter, which are actually not enough. I can do that if I'm at the balcony, but if I'm at the second floor and the shelter is on the first floor, you just can't make it on time. Very scary moments if you're on the roads as well. Iron Dome doesn't intercept rockets that are about to fall in open areas. So it means that you're not protected. You have no shelters in the open roads outside. And it was kind of a contradiction. On the one hand, it was war. We had daily attacks of Hezbollah, especially since the summer. There was an increase in the areas that Hezbollah attacked. But on the other hand, we continue to go to work. My daughter hardly go to school, but when she did, it was like studying in the shelter, not going out for breaks, only inside the shelter, so she couldn't go every day. All in all, we had 5,000 attacks of Hezbollah during the war with various of types of weapons, and we had a situation of evacuated communities of 43 evacuated communities in the areas of 0 to 5 kilometers from the border. The communities were evacuated because we were afraid that Hezbollah will invade. It had a plan and it was fully prepared to invade. I saw them every day on the borderline preparing for this invasion, including building watching towers, taking photos of us, spying on us, etc. During the war, since actually day 2, since October 8th, Hezbollah launched anti-tank missiles against those communities, hitting a lot of houses. Anti-tank missiles were not against tanks, were against everything, including tanks, but mainly against homes and against civilian and military infrastructures on the border. They caused a lot of damage since Iron Dome cannot intercept them. And it was a true problem. People were afraid to come back to those communities as long as there is Hezbollah on the border threatening them with those advanced missiles. Eventually, last March, the Israeli government stopped the compensation. I will tell you all about it. How come? Like, what was the military achievement around that? But the bottom line is that people started to come back. There are communities that most people come back, and there are communities that are still empty, so it really varies from area to area. Those who are closer to the border naturally are still empty. The challenges are huge. These are communities that have been empty for so many months, like a year and a half, to bring the children back to school, to bring the sense of security, to bring the tourists back. This is an area that is very touristic. and to bring them back to, to bring the Israeli tourists to come and relax in an area of war, in an area that we had 200,000 dunams that were burned. Not easy. A lot of challenges, with gaps with regard to the school of the children. They didn't go to school. They had to move from school to school. I myself was not evacuated. As I've said, I live 9 kilometers from the border in an area that was not evacuated, but was under attack or around us almost every day. After 11 months of, as I've said, daily attacks, Israel moved from defense to offense. You can see the process here. Since October 2023 until September 2024, it was kind of a war of attrition. While, as I've said, in the summer, Hezbollah extended the areas which were attacked, meaning more fire to areas that are not evacuated, like my area, which this led eventually to an escalation into the Israeli offensive. IDF maneuvered only in the areas next to the border, not all over Lebanon, and not in wide areas. And actually, the goals of the operation were not to eliminate Hezbollah completely, but actually to remove the threat of an invasion. As I've said, Hezbollah was fully prepared and planned to invade to Israel, just like Hamas had done in October 7. It had exactly the same plan. We will never know why it didn't do it at the same time exactly. Maybe Hamas surprised it with the timing, when maybe Hezbollah decided for some reason to wait and see. But the bottom line is that once it missed the opportunity of, October 7, 6, 29, it lost the element of surprise. Many people left in the communities next to the border, as I've said, and Hezbollah gradually understood that it will not be as successful as Hamas, and it decided not to. But I can tell you that at the first few months of the war, nobody could promise us that Hezbollah wouldn't do it. They continued to threaten that they would. We felt completely not defended, very, very unsafe. There was another threat, though, not only the threat of invasion, which is the strategic threat of the rockets. Hezbollah had a huge arsenal of rockets, of tens of thousands of them, to various ranges. Some of them were accurate, some of them were not. Many of them were launched toward Israel during this war, but actually it's maybe less than 10% of the arsenal was used. And the scenario that everybody talked about during the years, that Hezbollah is capable of launching about 4,000 rockets a day if it will decide to in a scenario of war. Eventually it didn't, since IDF attacked those warehouses of missiles and rockets and actually neutralized the capability to cause that much of a threat to the state of Israel. When I'm saying that there was a plan to attack the state of Israel, what I actually mean is that there was a plan under the title of the unification of fronts. If you can just open me again the capability to share screen. I don't know why I lost it for a moment. Unification of fronts means that Iran planned to create an attack, simultaneous attack from various fronts against the state of Israel. It published its intentions with various ways in videos and speeches and whatever. Nasrallah talked about it from Hezbollah, the Iraqis talked about it, the Nujba of Iraq, the Hamas talked about it, everybody, the Iranians themselves talked about it. It was not a secret or anything. And what you can see now in the slide is the militias, the proxy militias of Iran, of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that were supposed to be part of this attack. What eventually happened is that there was not an invasion from various fronts, but there is, until today, a war against the state of Israel from various fronts in different ways. Like, for example, from Iraq, we had mainly drones that were launched. From Yemen, including yesterday night, I don't know if you know, we have almost every day missiles that are being launched. This means millions of Israelis that are running for shelter many times in the middle of the night. Of course, Hamas from Gaza. We have an escalation in West Bank, and of course everything that happened from Lebanon. So basically, except for Syria, all these fronts were, and until today, are active in different ways. Eventually, the Iranian regime views Israel as the small devil and United States as the big devil, and Israel is the representation of the big devil, which is not only United States, but it's actually the Western values in the Middle East, a foreign representation of foreign values, if you like, in the Middle East, and that's why the Iranians believe that the state of Israel should be eliminated. Hezbollah is responsible for distributing those ideas in Lebanon and actually also elsewhere, and that's why it's the same ideology. With Hamas, it's a little bit different since Iran and Hezbollah are Muslim Shiite. Hamas is Muslim Sunni, but they are sharing the idea of the need to eliminate the state of Israel in different ways. I will back to talk about the Iranians again, but I want to ask a simple question. Did Israel actually succeeded in gaining the goals of the war as I portray them here? And I think the answer is yes. We succeeded in taking off the threat of the rockets, and we succeeded in taking off the capability of Hezbollah to invade into Israel. What you see on the screen now is actually an exhibition that IDF made of the, I wouldn't say endless, but huge amount of munition that was taken out of Lebanon. And again, bear in mind that the ground maneuver of the IDF forces was only to a distance of few kilometers from the border itself. Not even to all the area that is considered South Lebanon. And yet the amount of weapons that was taken out of there is truly unbelievable. What you can see in those pictures, all these boxes that you see are boxes full of munition. This is live munition. When IDF folded this exhibition, we even have one soldier that was wounded because one of these shells exploded. It included rockets and guns and missiles and advanced anti-tank missiles and helmets and vests and truly so many different kinds of weapons. I took those photos. I was there in the exhibition, and to tell you the truth, with all my knowledge, when I saw that, it was truly overwhelming. So yes, IDF succeeded, and even something else happened. Hezbollah became much, much weaker in Lebanon, and this happened thanks to the capability of the IDF to kill many, many commanders of Hezbollah. You can see around 170, including all its leadership. Basically, the leadership of Hezbollah, and you should know the leadership, it's not a leadership that, it's 5 years old. It's a leadership of 30 and even 40 years old. These are people that I remember from my military service years ago as terrorists with a lot of experience of killing not only Israelis, by the way, also Europeans and Americans, people that are involved in terror in many places across the world, and they are all gone now. The new leader of Hezbollah that replaced the guy that you see on the screen, Hassan Nasrallah, the new leader is Naim Qassem, and he is not as charismatic as Nasrallah. He has huge difficulties in bringing Hezbollah back to be a leading proxy of Iran as it used to be. There is also difficulty in finding field commanders to replace those who were killed, and thousands more of military operatives that were killed in the pagers attack and walkie-talkie attack, etc. Those targeted killings in various ways, not in pagers, but in just targeted killings, are still ongoing, and we'll talk about it in a minute. So this also gives us a sense that what Israel had done in Lebanon is truly a game changer, if you like. November 27, an agreement was signed for a ceasefire of 60 days, which in the end Israel was supposed to completely withdraw from Lebanon. Unfortunately, in this agreement, we didn't have a deadline for the disarmament of Hezbollah. The area that you see in my map here, let's see if I can use some kind of of a drawing here. The area that you see on my map here, okay, this is an area that due to the agreement is supposed to be empty of any illegal weapon. Agreement that was signed back in 2006 and became valid again, I'll put it this way, with the current agreement, but there is no deadline for the disarmament of Hezbollah in this area. And eventually, since we hardly saw any progress around that, Israel decided with the agreement with the Americans and what we call the mechanism, a 5-party mechanism that was created, part of this ceasefire agreement, which is Israel, or IDF if you like, Lebanese armed forces, generals from the United States, generals from France, and UN, UNIFIL, UN interim force to Lebanon, 5 parties. This mechanism is supposed to create something more effective to disarm Hezbollah, but as I've said, not effective enough. And eventually Israel decided to keep 5 positions, the 5 green circles that you see on my map, which are close to the fence of the border. And actually these are what we call controlling areas, areas that are on top, watching everything that is below. What is below? Below are Lebanese communities where Hezbollah is operating inside those communities, or used to operate until the war, until IDF entered there, and Israeli communities just across the border. Now I want to explain how important this is. An Israeli woman that was afraid that Hezbollah will enter to her community and rape her daughter and murder her family is now being asked to come back home. When she is coming back home, she opens the window and she sees a hill on top of her. And now if she will see on top of this hill an Iranian flag, what, by the way, this is now what is happening, this is a problem. She wouldn't want to be back there. If she will see a Hezbollah flag, she will say, okay, what's the point? What did we do with everything? We'd been evacuated for a year and a half. But if she will see an Israeli flag, she will feel much more protected. And this is the psychological reason of keeping those 5 points. And of course, there is also an operational justification for that, because there is a limit of how much you can see from above with drones or with, I don't know, jets. If you have eventually a binocular, you can see much more. And this is something that we learned again as a lesson from October 7th. Look, the American pressure and the American involvement on the ground, as I've said, with part of the mechanism, is bringing some results with regard to the disarmament of Hezbollah and the commitment of the Lebanese army, or at least parts of the Lebanese army, to this enforcement that we are talking about. It brings the Lebanese government to declare again and again and again its commitment to 1701, to this resolution, United Nations Security Council resolution that ended the war in 2006, and it's still the reference of disarming Hezbollah in the area that you can see on my map. Is this enough? Well, to tell you the truth, it's far from being enough. If you only look at the IDF attacks, how do I get that? If you only take a look at the IDF attacks, since the ceasefire started, this map is until April 18. More than 300 airstrikes. I'm not even talking about artillery, just airstrikes. 46% of them in the green area there, which is the area that's supposed to be disarmed by the Lebanese army. What are these attacks? How come Israel is continuing to attack if there is a ceasefire? Well, if Israel identify a violation, an immediate threat, activity of military operatives of Hezbollah, weapons, and anything that eventually the mechanism that I talked about is not taken care of, or there is no time for the mechanism to take care of while these military operatives are doing something that may be dangerous, Israel is attacking. And we had tens of military operatives of Hezbollah that were killed by Israel since the ceasefire in Lebanon. So if the Lebanese army was doing a great job in disarming Hezbollah, and we didn't have any presence of Hezbollah in those areas, in the green areas especially I'm talking about, there was no need for any Israeli activity over there. But since the Lebanese army is far from being enough with regard to what is truly needed here, Israel is still operating. Only in the past week or so, Israel killed 9 Hezbollah military operatives, infantry, special forces, infrastructures, engineering, and smuggling weapons. These are just examples for the 9 that were killed. The UN forces that I've mentioned revealed to be completely irrelevant and even damaging to the cause of disarming Hezbollah in South Lebanon. Everybody understands that today, and I want to give you 2 examples to explain what I mean. During the years, UNIFIL used to say that it cannot disarm Hezbollah because it's the mission of the Lebanese army. It is only assisting the Lebanese army, and because of that, it cannot operate in areas, populated areas, inside the buildings, inside the homes, etc. It was supposed to have freedom of operation in open areas. What we had found out, as you can see an example in the video, during this war is that Hezbollah actually operated everywhere. It operated in populated areas using the Lebanese as human shield, and it operated, as you see in the video, in open areas, no population, next to UNIFIL positions, actually using UNIFIL as human shields. This is a tunnel that was found next to UNIFIL position. What UNIFIL didn't see them, UNIFIL didn't know. Of course they knew. We found tens of these. It's not an exception, what you see over here. It's truly unbelievable. Another example is the fact that UNIFIL refused to evacuate from those areas next to the border where IDF maneuvered, and actually disturbed the IDF in its effort to disarm Hezbollah. And for me, this is very, very sad, because throughout the years I used to say that it's okay. Let's have the mandate. The problem is the mandate. It's not UNIFIL by itself. And today I understand that the problem is not only the mandate. UNIFIL actually sabotaged the tries and the efforts to disarm Hezbollah. I'm trying to present here a complex picture. I'm trying to present here a picture of advantages and disadvantages. And I do believe that we are facing an historical opportunity in Lebanon to bring a true change in the essence of the Lebanese state, a different kind of future to Lebanese and Israelis alike. There are risks in this opportunity, but we have to take them. There are risks such as Lebanon will deteriorate to a civil war, or Hezbollah taking over the Lebanese army, or just a failure of the process, as happened already in the past, like in 2006. But still, there is an opportunity here, and I want to explain. On the political level, in Lebanon, a president and a prime minister were nominated after a few years of a political system that was completely frozen, that Hezbollah refused to nominate those 2 positions because there was no agreement. In Lebanon, you need to have consensus of who is the president, who is the prime minister. The prime minister will always be Muslim Sunni. The president will always be Christian. And you need to get an agreement of all the different sects of who these people are. And there was no agreement. Hezbollah, under pressure, eventually agreed to the nomination of the personalities that the Americans preferred, that the Christians of Lebanon preferred, and not necessarily the Muslim Shiites. This president that was nominated was previously the commander of the army that didn't disarm Hezbollah, but today is declaring again and again and again that Hezbollah should be disarmed and should be one weapon in Lebanon, which is the weapon of the army. These are very good news. This is a lot of good intentions. Yet, on the other hand, when you look at the government of Lebanon, they promised, the prime minister promised that the government will be not political, that Hezbollah will not be a member of the government. But actually, all the ministers in the government were nominated by the political parties. 2 of them were nominated by Hezbollah itself. Hezbollah continued to preserve its what we call state within a state system, if it's education system, if it's health system, if it's banks, if it's gas stations, etc. All these are still exist and legal in Lebanon. And as long as these civilian infrastructures of the state within a state exist, it would mean that Hezbollah has the capability of reviving and renewing its military branch as well. Yet, again, I promise to present a complex picture. It does have, Hezbollah do have a lot of difficulties with regard to its reconstruction, and it's very busy in the reconstruction in the civilian level, meaning there is a lot of destruction in South Lebanon after IDF eliminated all these weapons caches inside the houses, and there is a lot of damage, as I've said, to the military capabilities of Hezbollah. I'll give you a few examples. Part of the money and part of the weapons that were smuggled into Lebanon before the war came in direct flights from Iran that landed in Hariri airport. This is not happening anymore. Iranian flights are not landing in Hariri airport anymore. 3 workers in the airport that collaborated with Hezbollah were fired just a few weeks ago, and these are just examples for positive developments, I would say. Hezbollah has problems with cash, and we see it tries to smuggle cash in diplomatic flights from Iran, for example, around Nasrallah's funeral, or through other countries like Turkey. Hezbollah, I give an example, around Nasrallah's funeral, just before Nasrallah's funeral, a few weeks before, Hezbollah announced or asked his people not to cash the checks that it gave them, compensation for the destruction of the war. After the funeral, when Iranian delegations came to participate in the funeral, and they came with diplomatic flights, they probably brought money, and then Hezbollah announced to his people, you can go and the checks can be cashed. I want to show you just to, a little bit of, how should I put it, just to share with you how Nasrallah's funeral looks like. How does that look like? What does that actually mean? Let's see if I will succeed with technology. I always lose against technology. I want you to hear the voices as well. Share sound. And I'll give it a moment so you will be able to see. It's not that. That's one.
الموت لإسرائيل! الموت لإسرائيل! لبيك يا نصر الله! الموت لأمريكا! الموت لإسرائيل!
I'm not sure you need to know Arabic in order to understand what he was saying. This is death to Israel. They swear to Nasrallah, and then they call death to America. This is just, and look how many people, and this is in Beirut, in the center of Beirut. It doesn't mean that Hezbollah is strong. It just means that it is succeeding in preserving its base. And we shouldn't forget that for a moment. Hezbollah has a problem in smuggling weapons through Syria, which was the main corridor of smuggling weapons into the hands of Hezbollah from Iran. And here I want to talk a little bit about the developments in Syria, because what happened is that right after the ceasefire was announced between Israel and Lebanon, somebody in Syria understood that there is an opportunity here. Somebody in Syria understood that the Shiite axis is weak, that the main proxy of Iran in the region was defeated, and maybe now they can take Damascus. And this somebody was the person that you see on the screen now. He has 2 names, Ahmed Ashara, this is the name he was born with, but his nickname is El Jolani, that's his terrorist name. He was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, and today he is the leader of Syria. He nominated himself as the leader of Syria. He succeeded in overthrowing Assad after around 15 years of a civil war. And it looks like great news, but look at his development from the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, then to uniforms as the one who is freeing the Syrian people, whatever, and then with the tie, impressing the West, with his new suit, but actually there is no reason to believe that he abandoned his radical views. And again, this is a combination of a risk and opportunity at the same time, because this guy is fighting Hezbollah. This guy is not enabling Hezbollah to smuggle weapons from Iran through Iraq and Syria into Lebanon. But at the same time, he doesn't believe in democracy, human rights, women's rights, etc. He is a radical Islamist. We should be very careful from replacing one radical ideology in Syria as the Shiite radical ideology with another radical ideology like the Sunni radical ideology. That's why when he entered Damascus, Israel immediately decided to operate and to make sure that all the munition of the Syrian army that completely collapsed will not fall in the hands of this guy and his people. And Israel entered into the buffer zone. I want to show you a map of what is this buffer zone and what do I mean. And Israel immediately eliminated all the munition, or almost all the munition, of the Syrian army, making sure that it doesn't fall in the hands of Ashara and his people. Now, what is the buffer zone? In 1974, Israel and Syria had an agreement that the area next to the border, on the Syrian side of the border, which is the purple area on my map, will be completely demilitarized. There will be no army there. Reality and agreements are very different from each other in the Middle East. And eventually, when the civil war started, everybody carried guns and everybody were armed in this area. Everybody, it means the rebels and ISIS and Hezbollah and the Iranians and the Russians and the Syrian army and like so many players. Then the rebels lost, and the Syrian army and Iran and other proxies of Iran and Hezbollah had weapons there. And then the Syrian regime lost. And then Israel entered into the buffer zone and said, okay, as a lesson from October 7th, we're not going to enable any radical ideology to carry guns next to our communities. On the Golan Heights, we have many communities which are very close to the border. We will enforce that. We will make sure that it is truly a buffer zone. And again, until we will understand how the future is going to look like, we are not going to leave our people and civilians on the Golan with zero time for alert. So let's dedicate a few minutes, and I do have a few minutes, to Syria, which is becoming very, very interesting. On the one hand, as I've said, there is an opportunity here, a remove of the threat. On the other hand, there is a risk of development of, if I may say, Sunni axis. Who is the leader of the Sunni axis? It's not the Shah, it's Turkey. And this is very interesting, because what happened to Erdogan, it's also kind of a process. Like he was always, Erdogan, like, let's not be mistaken, he truly believes he is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. He truly believes that Hamas are liberty warriors, are freedom warriors. He truly believes in the radical interpretation of the Sunni Islam. That's Erdogan, the president of Turkey. He completely changed the politics in Turkey since he came to power. And what we saw in the past, I would say, a few years, is also kind of a radicalization of Erdogan with its attitude to Israel, and including some very problematic expressions only recently. And Turkey is trying to become or to replace Iran inside Syria. Now, I don't know if I can imagine a direct conflict between Israel and Turkey, but I can definitely imagine a scenario that Turkey will provide Western weapon to the hands of a Shah, which this is exactly what we wanted to prevent. I can totally imagine a scenario that Turkey will try to develop its own proxies, because Syria today is not united. Okay, Shah still has a long way until he will bring the sovereignty of the state of Syria again after 15 years of a civil war. It's completely divided between different groups and militias and parties, and he's working very hard to change that. But Turkey can definitely work with proxies in Syria to build its power there, a power that can threaten Israel. Last week, something very interesting happened. Turkey in kind of a forum that was gathered between Erdogan and Eshara announced that it is establishing a new regional mechanism that will include Turkey itself, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. And what is the goal? The goal is to deal with the undermined position of Israel to the stability of this region. That's like the working assumption of this forum. I'm not sure they will succeed in actually bringing everybody in, but the fact that they are trying, and that's the title, is very troubling, and we should follow what Erdogan can truly make out of that. Israel, for its part, is trying to work with the United States to create some kind of mechanism of coordination with Turkey to make sure that Israel can take care of its own interest in Syria, like what we did with the Russians, actually. I am not sure we will succeed, but that's for now like the best we can do to try to neutralize those threats. Russia is still in Syria in a very limited way, only focused in 2 bases, which it actually rented from the previous government, and there is kind of dialogue with the Shara of how much Russia can still preserve its presence. It is very important for them to preserve their presence in Syria. Iran didn't give up, even though we're talking about Turkey, even though Iran lost. Iran didn't give up, and Iran is actually now trying to develop new ways, not only through Syria, new ways to bring the munition to Hezbollah in various ways, from the land, from the air, from the sea, through Syria, through maybe Libya, through Turkey, whatever. And, it will take time until we'll see one route or another, but they are working in all those directions. All of them are longer routes than what they used to have, and they will need a lot of adaptations. If I'm trying to say a few words now about Iran, I think that following its ideology that I already spoke about, Iran is developed 3 assets against Israel. The proxies, as you saw everywhere in the Middle East, the long-range missiles, which already attacked us twice in April and in October, but failed, and the nuclear program. And the nuclear program is a big question. It's a big question when Iran will become nuclear. Is it already capable of becoming nuclear and it's just a matter of decision, or did it already become nuclear and we just don't know? I think that if October 7th would have happened when Iran is nuclear, Israel would be in a completely different situation today, and it would be extremely dangerous. It's not that Iran will definitely use the nuclear weapon. I truly don't know if it will have, and I hope we'll never find out. But I think it's about the freedom of operation, the capability of Israel to defend itself, while if Iran will have a nuclear weapon, that it will threaten to use it. And you can see what I mean when you look at the Ukraine-Russian conflict. Each time somebody wanted to protect Ukraine, Putin immediately threatened with its nuclear weapon. So it will be the same. I was asked to talk a little bit about misconceptions of the West. And I will take my last 2 minutes to talk about that. And I want to talk about, like I was asked, what are the misconceptions of the West with regard to this area? And I think we can talk of a few. The first thing is that, like when the people that I meet, at least, okay, I feel that in many cases, they don't have a clue that there is something going on here in the Middle East or on our borders or the war here in the North that has nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That the 2-state solution cannot be a solution because it's not the issue. Like Hamas and Hezbollah, they couldn't care less about this 2-state solution. They want 1 state, which is not a Jewish. That's it. That's all they want. They don't understand that what we are facing here is a radical religious ideology that war is the goal by itself, not just the mean. It's the campaign, the violent campaign, it's part of the goal. That human life, what we call the culture of death, the human life, are not the goal. The goal is not to prosper and to live. No, on the contrary. The idea is to sacrifice human life for a different kind of goal, which is the campaign itself to eliminate the state of Israel. This is a totally different way of thinking, and many people completely don't understand that or completely miss that. Like I hear voices of we should negotiate. Let's understand what's the interest, what's the economic interest, what's the needs. We are talking on completely different zone over here, and many people miss that. My second note is that in many cases, the West assume that if there was an agreement, it will be respected. If there is a nuclear deal, Iran will follow. If there is a peace agreement, 1701 to disarm Hezbollah will be disarmed. In the Middle East, things were exactly the opposite. You can sign an agreement and you can not respect it. That's part of the tactic. It's completely legitimate to sign an agreement and not respect it. If I'm going back to the 7th century, to Muhammad, okay, he signed an agreement with those who were against him for 10 years of ceasefire. What did he do? After 2 years, he attacked them. It took him 2 years to prepare, and then he surprised them. They thought they signed an agreement for a ceasefire. And he thought, yes, I signed an agreement, and that way I can attack them and I can surprise them. And this agreement became a symbol or even a source of legitimacy to do the same thing today in modern times. The third note is about the West that gives too much credibility to what happened to Hezbollah in the war. But when I am looking back 18 years ago, or I am looking forward 18 years from today, I feel been there, done that. Like Hezbollah is weak, there are a lot of promises, a lot of declarations to disarm Hezbollah. Eventually, this opportunity, as I've said, could be missed. And we have to make sure that we are not following false promises, that we are with our eyes open, watching day and night that all these promises are being fulfilled. At the same time, there is misunderstanding about, as I've said, the Shah, what he wants and the risk that he's creating today. This means that in many cases there is a tendency to divide the world to black and white, good and bad, I don't know. No, there are many players here in the Middle East. Last sentence. Yes, there is war for the purpose of war and negotiations for the purpose of negotiations. The Iranians want to negotiate the nuclear deal in order to negotiate a nuclear deal. The mission is not to get a nuclear deal, it's to negotiate a nuclear deal, and that way to do whatever they want, meanwhile, with the nuclear project. They had done that in the past 20 years, like in really an impressive way. I think I can stop here and open it for questions.